She gave a homeless man a loaf of bread, technically expired, technically against the rules. By noon, she was fired. By 7 p.m., over 100 strangers stood in front of her house, bread in hand, tears in their eyes. What happened in those 6 hours stunned an entire town and changed her life. Hi there. Welcome to the Smart Intelligence Channel. Before we dive into today's story, I'd love it if you could hit that subscribe button and drop a like. Wishing you and your family good health and happiness. Now, let's get started. Sarah Mitchell wasn't someone you'd remember from a crowd. She wasn't loud. She didn't wear flashy clothes. She didn't carry herself like a hero. She was just there, quietly, softly. Like background music that only the kind-hearted seem to notice. She worked the register at a grocery store just 4 blocks from her small one-bedroom apartment in downtown Asheville, North Carolina. The store wasn't much, just another mid-sized franchise with fluorescent lights that buzzed faintly, and shelves that always seemed to need restocking. But Sarah loved her job, not because of the paycheck, which barely covered rent and the $68 utility bill, but because she loved people. She believed small kindnesses added up. A smile. A "have a nice day." A coupon she clipped for a customer who looked like they could use one. She never told anyone, but she knew hunger intimately. Growing up, there were weeks when her mom boiled tap water and ketchup to make soup. Sarah used to lie to her school lunch aide, saying she wasn't hungry, so her little brother could eat her sandwich instead. That kind of past doesn't just vanish. It leaves you tender, hyper-aware. And sometimes, it makes you do things others wouldn't dare. At 26, Sarah still clipped coupons religiously and never let food go to waste. She was the kind of person who'd freeze leftover soup in labeled Ziplocs, each bag carefully dated in black Sharpie. Her freezer was full of just-in-case meals, mostly for other people. Her neighbor, Mrs. Caldwell, had arthritis and lived alone. Sarah often left Tupperware containers outside her door with sticky notes that read, "Thought of you. Hope this helps." She didn't have much, but she gave what she had. Most of her coworkers clocked in and out without much thought. They chatted during slow hours, snuck glances at their phones, and groaned about rude customers. But Sarah? She remembered names. She remembered who liked paper bags over plastic. She remembered the kid who hated raisins and the old man who always asked for his change in quarters because he collected them in glass jars. To the regulars, Sarah wasn't just a cashier. She was Sarah. The girl who complimented your haircut even if it was terrible. The girl who quietly paid the extra $1.18 for a struggling mom who came up short at checkout. The girl who stayed an extra 10 minutes after her shift to help bag groceries for an elderly customer who walked with a cane. She didn't do it for recognition. She did it because it felt right. Her life outside work was simple. She had no car, so she walked or took the Route 9 bus. She lived with a rescued cat named Beans and spent her evenings curled up with a library book and a cup of chamomile tea. Her idea of splurging was buying the name brand dish soap when it was on sale for $2.79. But beneath that modest routine beat a heart of fire, a quiet rebel against the indifference of the world. Sarah believed deeply, fiercely, that no one deserved to go hungry. Especially not in a town where a pack of muffins was thrown out just because it hit its sell-by date. She had a reputation among employees, too. Not bad, just different. They called her the soft one. They meant it kindly. But sometimes, in staff meetings, when the store manager talked about shrinkage and waste control, Sarah would glance toward the backroom shelves where unsold bread sat in bags marked, "Discard by midnight." She never said anything. She just looked. And sometimes she thought too much. The irony wasn't lost on her. That in a store overflowing with food, rows of cereal, crates of fruit, gallons of milk, somehow, outside its walls, there were people starving just a few feet away. She noticed a man lately, mid-50s, ragged coat, shoes taped at the sides. He lingered near the bike rack out front, not asking for anything, just watching. One time, he helped an old woman with her cart. Another time, he waved at a toddler who waved first. Sarah noticed him every day. And more importantly, she noticed he never came inside. He wasn't the only one either. Asheville wasn't immune to poverty. Sarah once counted 5 people in one night digging through the store's dumpster. She stopped counting after that. But on that one particular evening, the one that would change everything, Sarah made a decision. A simple one. An instinctual one. A loaf of wheat bread was set to expire at midnight. It was still perfectly fine. She could have tossed it into the black trash bin behind the store. No one would have questioned her. Instead, she wrapped it in a plastic bag, stepped outside during her break, and handed it over with a quiet smile. She didn't know someone had seen. She didn't know someone had taken a photo. She didn't know her small act of defiance would cost her a job. But Sarah didn't do it to be remembered. She did it because to her, no one with an empty stomach should ever feel invisible. And that's what made her unforgettable. It was a Wednesday. The kind of gray, drizzly Carolina evening that seeps into your bones. The parking lot glistened under the faint glow of the streetlights, puddles reflecting tired brake lights as people hurried home with their groceries. Inside the store, Sarah stood behind her register, scanning items and exchanging soft smiles like usual. But tonight felt heavier. The manager had just made the rounds, reminding staff about loss prevention protocols. Expired goods were to be logged and tossed immediately. "We can't afford compassion when it comes to the bottom line," he'd said, half joking. Sarah nodded along like everyone else, but her heart sank. It was nearing 7:45 p.m. when she noticed him again. The same man with the taped-up shoes. He wasn't panhandling. He never asked for anything. He just stood there, soaked from the rain, eyes locked on the store's automatic doors as they opened and closed again and again. Sarah's shift ended at 8. She made a quiet decision. On her way to the break room, she passed the bakery cart. Sitting on the bottom shelf was a loaf of honey wheat bread. It was marked, "Sell by 4:12 today." It would be discarded within the hour. No mold, no damage. Just one day too old for policy. She picked it up, cradling it in her arms like something fragile, and slipped it into a spare plastic bag. Her hands were trembling, not from guilt, but from adrenaline. Not because she was afraid of breaking a rule, but because somewhere deep inside, it felt sacred. Stepping outside, the air bit at her cheeks. She approached the man slowly, unsure how he'd react. "Hey," she said gently, holding out the bag. "It's not much, but it's fresh and warm." He looked up, startled at first. Then his face softened. "You sure?" he asked, voice raspy. She smiled. "I'm sure." He took the bread with both hands, like it was a gift, not a leftover. "Thank you," he whispered. "God bless you." She nodded, turned, and walked back inside. Her heart was pounding, not out of fear, but out of something else. A quiet sense of rightness. A feeling that she'd done something small that mattered. She didn't see the woman in the minivan, parked 3 rows away, watching through a fogged-up windshield. The woman had been waiting for her daughter, who was inside picking out snacks. She saw the whole thing, the exchange, the kindness, the gratitude, and she snapped a photo. No context, no names, just one sentence attached to the image when she posted it that night. "This cashier just gave a homeless man a loaf of expired bread. She didn't think anyone saw her, but I did." The photo was shared 112 times in the first hour. By midnight, it had been reposted on a local Facebook group with 40,000 members. By morning, it had reached Twitter. And Sarah, who had no social media presence, had no idea she was at the center of a storm. But before the world exploded, there was a quiet storm at work. The next morning, when Sarah clocked in at 8:02 a.m., the store manager called her into the office. His expression wasn't angry. It was blank corporate, unreadable. "Sarah, we need to talk," he said, closing the door behind her. "There was a violation of store policy last night. You gave away expired merchandise without clearance." She opened her mouth to speak, but he raised a hand. "Listen, I know your heart was in the right place, but this isn't personal. It's protocol. We can't have staff making those kinds of decisions independently. I'm afraid we'll have to let you go." The words hit her like a gust of cold wind. She stared at him, not angry, just stunned. But it was going to be thrown out, she said softly. It was still good. He sighed. I'm sorry, Sarah. It's not about the bread. It's about policy. She stood up, gathered her things in silence, and walked out for the last time. The bread had cost the store $1.39. Her act of kindness had cost her everything, or so it seemed. By 11 a.m., her phone began to buzz. Texts from old high school classmates. Voicemails from people she hadn't heard from in years. Someone even sent her a screenshot, her photo, shared thousands of times, now trending with hashtags like #BreadAngel and #HumanityFirst. But the internet wasn't the only place responding. Around 7 p.m., just as Sarah sat curled up on her couch with Beans the cat and a cup of reheated coffee, she heard a knock at her door. Then another. Then voices. She peeked outside and gasped. There, standing shoulder to shoulder on the sidewalk, were dozens, no, hundreds, of strangers. Men, women, children, holding loaves of bread. At first she thought it was a mistake, a gathering for someone else. Maybe a birthday party gone rogue, or a church group out for an evening walk. But then she saw the signs. One said, "Compassion shouldn't cost you your job." Another read, "Bread is not a crime." And then, the most unexpected thing of all happened. Someone stepped forward, holding a warm loaf of sourdough wrapped in a checkered cloth and said, "This is for you, Sarah." She blinked. How do you know my name?" "We read about you," the woman replied with a soft smile. "You reminded us what humanity looks like." Sarah stood frozen in the doorway, wind sweeping her hair gently around her face. The cat meowed behind her, confused by the sudden commotion. She wasn't used to crowds, or applause, or strangers calling her an inspiration. The line stretched nearly 200 feet down the block. One by one, people approached, handing her loaves of bread. White, wheat, rye, gluten-free. Some homemade, still warm. Some store-bought with little notes tucked inside. Messages like, "You gave more than bread. You gave hope." Or, "Your kindness reminded me of my mom." It wasn't just the bread. There were envelopes too. Cards with cash. Gift cards. Small donations. One man, wearing an old army jacket, handed her a sealed envelope and said, "That loaf saved someone like me once. Now it's my turn." She opened it later to find a check for $1,000 and a note. "For your rent. Keep doing what you do." Sarah tried to protest. "I didn't do anything big," she whispered to one woman hugging her tightly. "You didn't have to," the woman replied. "That's the point." Within the hour, a local news crew showed up. The journalist, a young guy in his 30s with a navy blue windbreaker and camera-ready smile, asked her gently, "Do you want to say anything to the people who've shown up?" Sarah hesitated. Her hands trembled slightly as she took the microphone. I didn't do this to be seen. I did it because no one should go to bed hungry. And if I had to choose again, I'd still give him that bread." The crowd clapped. Some even cheered. Others wiped away tears. The story went viral. Again. This time, with faces, names, a message. Headlines like, "Cashier fired for feeding homeless man. Town responds with breadstorm of support." By the end of the night, over 117 people had visited her doorstep. Some from as far as 40 miles away. One woman drove 65 miles from Charlotte just to hand Sarah a hug and a banana loaf. "You reminded me to care again," she said. But as beautiful as it was, the moment didn't last without its shadows. The grocery store issued a brief public statement the next day. While we appreciate the community's concern, our employee violated company policies regarding expired goods and direct public distribution. We stand by our decision, though we are evaluating future training methods. Translation, they weren't taking her back. But Sarah didn't expect them to. What she didn't expect was what happened next. A local bakery owner named Ellen Rivera, a fiery, fast-talking woman in her 50s, known for her cinnamon rolls the size of dinner plates, showed up at Sarah's apartment the following afternoon. She held out a box of fresh scones and said, "You're hired if you want it." Sarah blinked. "Hired?" Ellen grinned. "Full-time, $21 an hour. Health care after 90 days. And all the carbs you can eat. What do you say?" Sarah stared at her, stunned. "But I've never worked in a bakery." You've worked with people, Ellen said. That's harder. And just like that, everything changed. Sarah didn't just get a job. She got a second chance. She spent her first week learning how to braid challah bread, how to measure yeast by ounces, how to pipe frosting without it looking like a toddler's art project. Her hands smelled of sugar and flour, and for the first time in weeks, she slept through the night. Customers who had once passed her by in the grocery store now came into the bakery just to see her. "You're the bread angel, right?" they'd say, beaming. She never quite got used to the name, but she always smiled politely, dusting her apron and offering them a croissant. She'd made one decision, one small, silent choice to hand someone a loaf of bread, and it had flipped her world inside out. But the most surprising part wasn't the applause, or the donations, or the job offer. It was how many people wanted to do the same. 3 weeks later, Sarah opened the front door to find 3 kids standing on her porch with paper bags. They had collected baked goods from their neighbors to hand out at a nearby shelter. One of them, a boy with glasses and wild curls, handed her a note card. It read, "We saw what you did. We wanted to do something too." Sarah looked up at them, eyes misting. In that moment, she realized something profound. It had never been about the bread. It was about the spark and the fire it left behind. Sarah had begun settling into her new rhythm at the bakery, kneading dough, greeting customers by name, watching the ovens turn simple ingredients into something comforting, something warm. But behind the swirl of cinnamon and butter, something still tugged at her. The man she gave the bread to, she never saw him again. In all the noise that followed, headlines, hashtags, job offers, hundreds of loaves delivered to her doorstep, his face had slipped into the background. Quiet, like he always was. It bothered her more than she admitted. He wasn't just a symbol in a viral photo. He was a real person. And she wanted to know, did he ever find shelter? Was he okay? Did he know what happened because of him? She decided to look for him. It started with a trip to the church pantry 3 blocks south, where volunteers said he sometimes showed up for hot meals. Then she visited the public library, where people without homes often rested in the warmth. She asked around, showed a printed-out photo from security footage, a blurry side profile, barely visible under a tattered hoodie. Most people didn't recognize him. Some shrugged. Others avoided her eyes. Until she reached the last bench at the Greyhound bus station. An older man in a denim jacket looked up from his newspaper and said, "Yeah, I know him. Name's Eddie." Her heart skipped. "Where can I find him?" He pointed. "Sometimes sleeps behind the old furniture warehouse on Main. But it's not safe out there lately. Lot of folks been moved along." That evening, Sarah brought a thermos of chicken soup and a fresh loaf of rye. She walked carefully past the chain-link fence, her breath catching in the cool April air. And then, tucked beneath a pile of weathered blankets and cardboard, she saw him. Same patched coat, same gentle face. "Eddie?" she said softly. He looked up, blinked. For a moment, confusion danced in his eyes. Then, "Bread girl." She smiled, heart tightening. You remember me?" He chuckled. "Hard to forget someone who hands you dinner with a smile like that." She sat beside him, gently offering the soup and bread. He accepted both with shaking hands. "I've been looking for you," she said. "Why?" "Because everything that happened, people coming to my house, the job, the story, it started with you." He looked down at the soup. "I didn't mean to get you in trouble." "You didn't," she replied. "You reminded me why I do what I do." They sat in silence for a while, broken only by the distant hum of traffic and the soft clinking of the thermos lid. And then Eddie spoke. "I used to be a teacher," he said quietly. "Middle school science, back in Tennessee." Sarah looked at him, surprised. 10 years, he continued. "Taught Newton's laws, built volcano models with baking soda. The whole thing." "What happened?" "My wife died. Cancer. The bills swallowed everything. Lost the house, then the job. Grief makes you slow. Schools don't want slow." Her chest ached. "I'm so sorry." He gave a small smile. "I don't tell people that. They just see an old guy in torn shoes. No one wants to know how he got there." "I do," she said. He nodded, eyes glassy. "You're the first one who asked." That night, Sarah posted a new update. Not a viral moment, Not a thank you note. Just the truth. His name is Eddie. He was a teacher. He lost everything except his kindness. If you've shared my story, please share his too. Because he's not a symbol, he's a person. And he deserves to be seen. The post didn't go as viral as the first one, but it didn't need to. Within 48 hours, a former student messaged her. Is this Mr. Edison from Ridgeway Middle? He was the reason I became a nurse. Then another. He taught me to love science. Please let me help. And then something unexpected happened. A small GoFundMe page, created quietly by someone Sarah didn't even know, began to gain traction. Help Mr. Eddie get back on his feet. $20. Then $100. Then $200. By the end of the week, it had reached over 28,000. Ellen, the bakery owner, helped coordinate everything. She called a friend at a local community center who secured Eddie temporary housing. Another friend donated clothes. A retired nurse volunteered medical checkups. And when Eddie saw it all, tears rolled down his weathered cheeks. I thought people forgot me, he whispered. Sarah took his hand. They didn't. They just didn't know you were still here. Eddie moved into a small studio apartment on Oak Street. Nothing fancy, just 480 square feet. But it had heat, a clean bed, and a kitchen with working appliances. For the first time in years, he slept without a jacket on. A few days later, Sarah stopped by to deliver a new coffee maker and a bag of groceries. I saved you the cinnamon rolls, she said, placing the bag on his counter. He laughed, a deep, warm laugh that filled the room. And in that moment, Sarah realized something else. She thought she'd lost everything when she was fired. But the truth was, she'd only just begun. The loaf she gave Eddie didn't just feed him for a night. It brought him home. And in doing so, it brought her to where she was always meant to be. Spring melted into early summer, and the days in Asheville grew longer, warmer, and fuller. The flowers returned first. Petunias blooming in cracked sidewalks. Daisies sprouting near the curb outside Sarah's apartment. Then came the people, smiling, waving, not at a stranger anymore, but at someone they now called neighbor. Life didn't explode into something huge. It expanded in small, meaningful ways. Sarah kept working at the bakery, her hands dusted in flour most mornings by 7 o'clock a.m. She learned how to knead dough with precision, how to pipe buttercream roses, how to run the register without fumbling change when the line wrapped around the counter. She wasn't just good, she was joyful. Customers still came in looking for her. Some brought notes. Others brought their kids, who pointed and whispered, "That's her, the bread lady." She'd laugh, offer them a sugar cookie, and always say, "I'm just Sarah." But behind that humble answer was a quiet ripple, a movement she never intended to start. The #BreadAngel hashtag inspired a group of teens to start Loaf Love, a weekly donation project where local bakeries gave their unsold bread to shelters. A college student interviewed her for a podcast about kindness as quiet resistance. And even the grocery store, yes, the one that fired her, revised their waste policy to allow leftover food donations at the end of each business day. They never apologized directly, but Sarah didn't need them to, because the apology came in loaves and letters and laughter. In every new story sparked by her own, Eddie, too, had found steady ground. His studio on Oak Street had been transformed. A thrifted armchair now sat near the window. A small bookshelf, donated by a retired librarian, held copies of old science books and novels. And taped on the fridge was a Polaroid photo. Sarah and Eddie, both holding slices of pie, both mid-laugh. He'd started tutoring part-time at the community center. 2 days a week, from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m., he taught 8th graders how to build vinegar volcanoes, explained the phases of the moon, and listened, really listened, to their stories. He was no longer invisible. One afternoon, Sarah dropped off a tin of peanut butter cookies. Eddie waved her in, grinning. "I got something," he said, reaching into a folder on the counter. He held out a letter. The seal read, "North Carolina Public Schools Substitute Educator Approval." "I'm going back," he said, voice cracking. "Not full-time, just enough. But I'm going back." She hugged him tighter than she ever had before. That night, back at her apartment, she made a simple dinner. grilled cheese and tomato soup, and sat on her porch with beans curled on her lap. The sun dipped low behind the hills, painting the sky in soft pinks and oranges. She looked out over her quiet street, remembering how it all began. A loaf of bread. That's all it was. But somehow, it had stirred something in people. The kind of story they didn't just read and scroll past. The kind they shared, talked about, acted on. It wasn't viral anymore. It was real. Alive. Sarah hadn't set out to change the world. She just didn't want someone to go hungry. But in doing so, she reminded thousands that the world didn't need heroes in capes or perfect policies. It needed heart, ordinary courage, everyday kindness, the kind that goes unnoticed until it doesn't. A few days later, she got a call from the city council. They were organizing a community kindness day and wanted to honor her. She hesitated at first. "I'm not comfortable being the center of things," she said. "But you didn't center yourself," the councilwoman replied. "Your actions did." At the event, Sarah stood in front of a crowd gathered under white tents in the town square. Kids held balloons. Seniors sipped lemonade. Music played from a local band. It was cheerful, low-key, full of warmth, just like her. They handed her a plaque. It read, "Sarah Mitchell," for reminding us that one small act of kindness can feed the soul of a city. She held it, cheeks flushed pink. "I'm honored," she said into the microphone. "But if I'm being honest, I just didn't want someone to go to bed hungry. That's all. That's something we can all help with." Applause echoed, but she didn't hear it clearly. Her eyes were locked on the third row, where Eddie sat, wearing a clean shirt and a smile that stretched all the way to the sky. He nodded at her, as if to say, "You did good, kid." That night, she passed by the grocery store where it all began. The old shelves were still there. So were the carts. But near the front window was a new sign. "Excess bread, donated daily, because no one should go hungry." She didn't smile out of pride. She smiled out of peace. Sometimes the smallest seeds grow into forests. And sometimes a loaf of bread is more than food. It's a beginning. Maybe the world doesn't change through grand speeches or perfect laws. Maybe it changes in the quietest ways. In bread handed to a hungry man. In a stranger's knock on your door. In the decision to care when no one else is watching. Sarah never saw herself as a hero. She didn't wear a badge or hold a title. But she reminded us that you don't need a platform to make a difference. All you need is heart. So the question now isn't, what can one person do? It's, what can you do today? Can you donate a warm meal to someone who needs it? Can you check on your neighbor who always seems alone? Can you forgive more quickly, love more freely, or give just once without expecting anything back? Because kindness doesn't need to go viral to matter. It just needs to happen. If this story moved you, don't let it end here. Be someone's Sarah. Be someone's spark. And if you ever feel small or unseen, remember this. A single loaf of bread rewrote an entire town's story. Yours could too. Thank you for watching. If you believe the world needs more stories like this, share it with someone who could use a little light today. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you never miss a story that proves kindness still lives here. We'll be back next week with another true tale of courage, compassion, and the quiet power of doing the right thing. Until then, stay kind, stay human, and stay with us. If this story hit home for you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your support keeps our team going and helps us bring more real, heartfelt stories to life.